Michael.
That's the spirit.
From Everflow. And when I was originally starting off in the industry, I actually started with brand affiliate management on the agency side. So this is a very relevant panel to me.
I'm Jordan, founder of Cove, Vice President of Marketing. These armrests are inconveniently high.
I know, I'm like sitting like this.
Hello, everyone. I'm Eli. I'm with Acceleration Partners, Global Account Manager for several programs. Hi.
Hi, I'm Jen. I'm the head of affiliate for Row, which is a telehealth platform. I will be mentioning some of the discrete conditions that people treat, so don't be embarrassed if I mention like genital herpes or cold sores or anything like that.
So to start off, like, how has user acquisition changed in the last few years, especially with like partner marketing?
I think one of the biggest things that's changed as an advertiser is I found that over the last 10, 15 years, cross-attributions become more and more difficult in terms of user acquisition. Because, you know, back in the early 2000s, most people only had their desktop, if that. And then now you've got television and iPhones and Androids and their desktop and whatnot. And so as an advertiser, it's becoming increasingly more difficult to get over that hurdle and figuring out how are you going to acquire these customers and how are you going to properly attribute them to your partners.
And sort of what has helped you sort of try and fight that problem?
Well, Everflow, right? No. No, but I think another big thing, apart from, you know, obviously having your Google Analytics set up correctly and Everflow and different attribution softwares, I've found a lot of success with self-reported mechanisms. So the moment someone finishes a purchase, we actually have a quick survey right at the end of our process that just says, hey, what was your first interaction with Cove? Mm-hmm. And so we have about, you know, depending on the week, we'll have about, you know, 40 to 50% of people that will fill that out. Mm-hmm. So we have a pretty good idea of, obviously this isn't perfect and you have to take into account all of your other attribution software that you're putting in place, but it does help you realize, okay, people remember this first interaction from this source. Mm-hmm. So that's been really helpful for us.
Cool, and how has partner marketing changed from your perspective, Eli?
Well, in relation to talking with publishers, recently I've seen more interest in who owns the user experience. Is the sign-up going to occur in the app? Is it going to be in another tab in the browser? Can we do an iframe? The UX department is getting more power in the negotiations. That's very interesting. Button in the US is a great example of what can be done app to app. But web, mobile, and desktop, I've talked with publishers that, hey, I want to have my own landing page and send you the sign up there. Like, well, I mean, yeah, but it's quite like sometimes out of the question. And at the end, if we align the values of what the publisher wants and what the brand wants, and that converts into a transaction, it's a win-win. But it's curious, like it's starting to come up more in conversations on the publisher side. Mm-hmm. On the brand side, the recent changes I've seen is finance department, the money people. Like they want to have more information about why are you guys paying this way? What is it up from the funnel? Why at the end? What's the risk? What are those spikes in the graphs? And it's helping us become more savvy of how to connect to other parts of the company. I mean, the closer you are to explaining something in terms of ROI, the closer you are probably to where the decisions are made. It's like one system to translate it all. So that's a very interesting change that I like it. I mean, it could be messy to have like another boss, but it's for the good. Yeah.
And I would say I see a lot of people actually joining the performance space. So there's a lot more players coming into the market and there's a lot of the traditional publishers. So if you look at, so if somebody's searching a condition, say they're searching erectile dysfunction and they actually want to read content about the condition, they will go on Healthline or GoodRx. And so these publishers used to be paid on a CPM because a lot of pharma companies will actually just pay and they're not as metrics driven. And so we see that a lot of advertisers are becoming more metrics driven. So rather than paying on a CPM, they're actually building these performance teams who are now implementing ad units within the website that is actually performance based, and they're actually working on optimizing those. There's also some interesting places where, you know, if a publisher has an email list and they just send content out, there's actually these like widgets that are embedded into an email that will show different ads. So I think there's a lot more players that are coming into the market.
And so with like that emailing side, like have you looked into like how to best do compliance on that side? Because email is a tricky thing.
Yes. So I think when you're building it in-house, which basically we used to use an agency, we moved everything in-house, and we've noticed that there's a lot of nuanced things between how you want to have a partner market your company. Do you want to provide them the creatives, or do you want to give them the freedom to make their own creatives? For us, we choose to make the creatives, but even within that, do you want it to say partner of Row? Do you want it to say Row advertisement? Or do you want it to say Row and come off as if they are just an extension of our company? So those are things that we considered, and we decided to actually provide the creatives and do everything in-house. There's challenges there as well, because there's a brand perspective, but there's also performance, and it obviously has to perform, and sometimes a publisher would want to do something differently than what our brand has created as an email.
Cool. And when should a brand start looking into partner marketing in the first place, do you think, Jordan?
Well, that question's kind of a catch-22, it seems like. I think it's twofold, because immediately, that's what we always hear, but at the same time, partner marketing is a very finicky space, especially so Cove is a DIY home security solution for residential homes or small businesses. And so there are a lot of different content blogs and different affiliates that you can look into, like SafeWise and Safe Home, that can drive hundreds of thousands of leads. The problem is everything's been transitioning away from a CPM basis to where and it's good for both the advertiser and the publishers that we go to more of a CPA. Hey, what actual revenue is being brought in right now? And what will happen, I feel like, with a lot of advertisers is they'll start immediately to try to build these relationships without looking into their CRO. And that can be a catastrophic.
What's CRO?
Your conversion rate optimization. So looking into what you're actually converting on your sales funnel. And that can be a catastrophic thing for really powerful relationships, because you could have a relationship that could take you to a $100 million company one day, but if you had acquired that relationship 6 months earlier, it could have been destroyed because they didn't get the return on their investment that they were looking at. So yes, we want to get partners immediately, but at the same time, you want to get partners in a timely manner that's strategic and that will actually be profitable for both the partner and the advertiser.
And how do you do that sort of optimization on the conversion side?
So, obviously there's lots of tools. Everybody's probably heard of VWO or Optimizely, or different tools that you can look at for A/B testing and split testing. But a big part of it, I suppose I'm speaking more to the advertisers, is just being patient with yourself. Through my experience with different startups that I've done, between 300 and 400 split tests, you'll have about a 400 to 900% increase on your CRO. Because 70% of the time, split tests are going to equate to nothing. They're usually going to be a negative detriment to your actual brand or to your conversion rate. And then you have 30% of the time that it's either the same or a slight increase. And then you have this small percentage of the time where you're going to have this massive bump on something that could be really, really small or ridiculous. But the problem is a lot of people get frustrated and overwhelmed with the CRO process. And they say, okay, you know what? I've tried 55 split tests and I'm not seeing any. So maybe my conversion rate's exactly where it needs to be. I guarantee that if you actually go in through and methodically look at your user's behavior and you'll find little things that they're doing that you can change around in your app or what you're doing, that you'll see significant increases, but it takes hundreds and hundreds of tests. So once you've done that, then all of a sudden you can onboard partners like crazy, because you know what, I've optimized this to the best of my ability, and I can bring in partners and agencies to come help me acquire as many customers as I want. But until you've done that, you're going to burn a lot of relationships if you don't.
Thanks. And then Jen, would you recommend people start with a brand? Or as a brand, would you recommend they start their own program or go with an agency for managing it?
So I can speak to our experience, and I think it depends, because if you are completely unfamiliar with the affiliate space, I think having the agency can help, because you get some guidance, they can help you figure out what kind of partners you want to work with. If you're highly focused on protecting your brand, you may want to do it in-house, because you're able to kind of determine what metrics you see and there are certain metrics you may not be able to share with an agency, like it's considered PHI information in our case. So when you are trying to build it in-house, you want to make sure that you have as much transparency. You determine your customer acquisition costs. You determine what the lead pricing you're willing to pay with different partners. And so we get a lot more transparency when you do it in-house.
What do you think about that, Eli?
Thank you for leaving me at last. Appreciate it. Well, at Acceleration Partners, we manage programs globally for several brands. And I've seen this very interesting.
Very big brands, to be clear.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about global brands. And what I rescue from what you guys said is you mentioned the testing and you mentioned knowing your KPIs. Whenever a brand has made a trade-off, meaning here's my business, this is where I say yes and this is where I say no, I think it's very valuable to bring in partners so that you don't compete on the same tactics and strategy. And at the same time, you win. And that also gives a partner some safety, right? Like, okay, maybe I'm a brand selling cars to students in the university, and faculty members are already there. But it's going to take me 6 months to develop the channel. It's not my game, but I want to test it. Try it with a partner. He's also going to feel safe that, okay, you're not going to compete with me and then come and absorb me in a year or two. So that strengthens the relationship. And it has to do with the trade-off. It's very interesting. When there's a trade-off, there's clarity, and you can build from there. Yeah. You can build, it's blue ocean, right? It's blue ocean. It's not competing. It's comparative advantages, something that's unique to each one that helps. And I think that ties back to a partner, right? Mm-hmm. A partner is somebody you can grow with, but really grow, and not just in a short run. I'm talking about long-run partnerships that deliver value.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of like the publisher partnerships, like how are you funding your partners, Jen?
We have a mix. So we have a lot of people that have found out we have funding, so they'll reach out, or they know people who work within the company, and so they'll reach out to us. One thing that we've actually noticed, though, is a lot of consumer brands, they work with a lot of deal sites, which drives a high volume and a lot of traffic. For us, we want to determine where's the incremental value there. So if we are determining what kind of partners, is deal sites going to be one of them, for example? Our emailer is going to be another part. And when you look at deal sites in particular, there's somebody who's already looking for a condition which you may have brought Roman to their attention because you've paid for Facebook or you've done search marketing, and now somebody's searching for a discount code, and now you're paying an affiliate off of that additional cost. So really it's determining on a high level what types of partners you want to work with. Is it deal sites? Is it emailers? Is it display? Is it native? And then kind of honing in on, okay, this is the channel I want to work with, native. What's required for this? And determining the brand guidelines you're going to set up, determining the tone of voice, and making sure that you have something in place so that you can clearly communicate that to any publishers.
And Eli, a little bit different on that, since you're like managing really like brands that anyone wants to promote, like how do you find like publishers you can trust, and like what is the process that lets you choose like, yes, I will give you a shot with this? So
the scenario is kind of like speed dating, right?
Yeah.
And it happens that we go after brands, but there's also brands that reach out to us. And it's also has to do with the trade-off. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of, it's very interesting, there's a lot of pitches where I get like, we can do everything. We can start tomorrow, 50K, and we'll get you up and running. And sometimes I even throw those tricky questions like, oh, really? And tell me more, and can we do this? Yeah, we can do. So it's kind of vague when it's like that. If you can do everything, it's kind of weird. Like, what is your company name? Like, email something. You know what I'm saying? So I kind of throw those tricky questions, and I'm making notes in my mind like, if she or he says no to one thing, okay, you know your game. And that tells me I can move to the next 7 seconds of attention, and then I can test if we're going to do something good as partners. And that's kind of how I think successfully we've selected this. We value embracing relationships a lot in the company, but that means really understanding who's in front of you, not another algorithm. You're not another coder. You have a name, you have a last name, you have a history, and that's going to tie into how we're going to do business, when it's good and when it's bad. It has to do a lot with dating, now that I'm doing this in my mind. It has to do a lot with what you do in dating. Because partnerships is about producing more together than each on its own, right?
Yeah.
And if you can get that on the pitch, if I'm talking to someone that knows their business,
Yeah.
then that's interesting. Then you get my attention.
Can I make a comment on that
Yeah.
as well? Going along with what you was saying about dating, I think another big part of it is finding partners or agencies and advertisers that have complementary skill sets. And what I mean by that is when I'm going to go out and look for a publisher or an agency or somebody, it's probably going to be fulfilling a need that I don't know how to do myself. A lot of times what advertisers will do, I feel like one of our weaknesses is we come in and we say, hey, we want you to do X, Y, Z, fix our problems. Like we want you to make us a profitable business model. And almost every time that's going to be a failure because they don't have either, between the two parties, you have to have the skill sets to be able to execute that partnership. And many times what happens is you have publishers and agencies coming to advertisers and like he said, pitching them, hey, we can do X, Y, Z for you, but they're not taking into account what type of knowledge do we have that will complement this company.
Yeah, I want to get back a little bit to this and like how you get your publishers, but to go back to like the dating side, like if they let you down, like when do you decide to give them a second chance?
Sometimes I do that on purpose.
Yeah.
You gotta, sometimes if they come back and that's a good sign, they're interested, I spend the time. I spend the time like, okay, so your expertise is email, but email hasn't converted well on me in Mexico because, so can we do something different? Like maybe you have the email they use it for login, and can we do something else? So if again, embracing relationships is going beyond the generic everything does or the product or the features. If I see real interest, that's something I cannot motivate. It's something within the partner. I'll spend the time developing their capabilities. We have a case where we worked with a partner that sells cars.
Yeah.
And we were not going to do display because we already know it was not converting for lead generation. But we started spending time with them with brainstorming, and we came up with a button. It's just HTML text and a link that says, hey, why don't you pay for this car driving with rideshare? And it's awesome. And it's just text and an image and the car page on all of the car sites. And we had to spend the time. They wanted to sell us display.
Yeah.
Now they don't want us to go from the button.
Yeah.
And now they're selling the same format to, hey, what are the complementary products are for cars? Insurance, financing. So when there's something true about the other person, like you can feel it, right? It's business. Everyone here, you can feel it. When I find something genuine and unique, I'll spend the time. Mm-hmm. And some of the cases we've lost money, but we get data, so that can back up later with something interesting.
Great. And Jen, I know that you are in a more difficult situation because it's much harder to give second chances, but what are your thoughts on both your own situation and like how you deal with like partners and trust?
So to be honest, I mean, you can be fined heavily by the FDA, and it's because they want to protect consumers, right? You don't want Pfizer to be telling you about all these drugs and not mentioning any of the risks associated with a drug, or have misleading articles that kind of make you click on an article saying this is going to cure your everything. So for us, it is very zero risk tolerance, mm-hmm. Which case we have to preemptively be careful with the type of partners that we align with. And also everything has to go through an approval process between brand, medical, and legal, which is its own beast in itself. But there's actually a lot of softwares that help you kind of push it along. So I think that's relevant to a lot of companies. As you grow bigger, you do have a lot more stakeholders within the company that's going to be looking at your department and trying to figure out what exactly you're doing, and making sure that there's no risk associated with bad publicity with the type of marketing that you're doing.
And I have a question. You covered these topics on the intro in the intro call, right?
Yes.
You tell them up front.
Yes.
Even though it's a bit scary.
Yeah.
And it could hurt like the pitch and the opportunity, but you got to say it's better, right?
Yeah, I think there's just setting expectations, right? Because you have to work with partners that are willing to understand that certain things are not allowable in the pharma industry. And the only reason why I'm honing in on that is because we have a lot of publishers that are familiar with mail enhancement. And so there's mail enhancement taglines and native advertisements that they'll send our way that we just can't we wouldn't be allowed to do. So for us, it's just being very upfront about it, and that's actually weeding out the types of partners that maybe don't want to deal with it or don't have the patience to work with you to really build a relationship and kind of find creative ways to actually sell the product.
Great.
Can I share a phrase about this? When working with big brands, kind of the training I got summarized in a phrase, and I tell publishers when I'm working with them and onboarding them, I tell them, whatever you do, if it comes in the news, make sure you're on the right side of the screen. Because you're dealing with global companies, you're dealing with, if anything goes wrong, just make sure you did the right thing, and that sums it up. Of course, you got to go into the details, right? But I think it sums it up.
Some people's moral compasses are a little more skewed than others.
And then you put it on the email, and then you put it on the email with another wording, and you recap it, and it's
You gotta have
important.
a legal document
That's right.
that covers you. Legal's got to be on your side.
Exactly.
And Jordan, you're in a unique situation because you're in a very competitive space with a bunch of big incumbents and everything. How are you finding your partners and publishers and making sure that they're a good fit for promoting you?
So yeah, we initially just started outreach by emailing all these different partners that have been big lead suppliers in the alarm industry. But to be honest, they're not going to give us the time of day. So what we started doing is we actually started taking building audiences based on what they would like. Usually it's their actual Facebook page, and then we just hit them with ads directed towards them and what we know they would be looking at. And then after a few months of doing that, it costs some money. Our outreach letter started getting returns, and they started reaching out to us and being like, "Hey, we've been seeing your ads. Shut them off." No, I didn't say that, but they started saying, we want to start writing about you, want to start talking about you, because for 3-4 months we were Coca-Cola to them. And so it was a little bit of cost associated with that, but if you can get creative, where you can look at and say, you know what, these aren't people that are going to buy my alarm system or my product per se, but these are one of my customers to an extent. They're going to help. I have to figure out a way to advertise to them as well and create this relationship, because initially, most times for at least smaller companies, people don't listen very much.
Cool. And is there any technologies you use in your companies that sort of help you with protecting your brand and everything? Is there any third-party tools that are actually really useful for you outside of Everflow?
Bad guy. I want to shout out that Forensic has been a great ally in terms of technology. There could be 10,000 new ways to scam tomorrow, and then 10,000 next day, and you just got to be with the best. So you got to be ready, right? So in terms of technology, we definitely look for click-to-install times. We check IP addresses. We check the source URL. Something I want to push over, it's contextual relationship to the banner. Hey, is the banner loading on a page that has these keywords or not? For a good way, and also to prevent associations we don't want to. I think that's very powerful. So technology is definitely helpful. And beyond technology, the one thing that's not hackable and is getting someone on the phone and putting the video on. I had a publisher that said, "Oh, so you guys really put the video on?" "Oh, yeah, you got to put it too." "Oh, I'm not ready." "Well, let's have the call tomorrow. Let's have the call." I really value talking to someone and see, is this guy whole? Is he taking it serious? So you have to have the technology. Not having the technology ensures failure. Mm-hmm. But then you have to go beyond that and be smart about it. And hey, how do they talk about their company? How do they talk about a bad experience? That's not hackable. And we had a case last year where there was a partner that was one of those partners that brings you a lot of money, and he questioned why the reversals and the cancellations. And there was a big learning for me, and I said, you know what? I'm 1 month in the job. I don't know. Give me 2 weeks. I found out. I work with you guys, excellent team. We drafted a publisher-ready description. 2 months later, after we went through we optimized, we cleaned up, I get a good referral from him from another program. He mentioned, yeah, Eli, he's a great guy. And he has a very strong character, personality. But we kind of turned it around, being approachable. It cost me a lot. I was really nervous. But yeah. Without the help of a good technology, probably going to be worse.
Yeah. And is anything?
I mean, in the
super effective?
past, my previous companies have used Forensic, and so it's been a great tool. I think Everflow has actually been a really useful tool because for us, we actually pay out on a lead because of regulation. So, as much as it would be ideal to pay out on a sale of a product, we don't do that. So I think Everflow has been a good tool that we could actually see, okay, how many leads have actually turned into a sale internally, and then we can kind of address whether we think a traffic source is a good source quality. And then another thing we've done is there's some softwares called Proof HQ is one of them. There's a bunch that's actually used in the pharma space. So I think it could be relevant because it's basically if you have multiple people that need to look at something that goes out, whether it's a publisher creative, you can actually have it go through each department. And so instead of trying to manage it yourself and you might be dealing with 50 creatives that have come through, you can actually have it automatically go to one department and then go to the next and the next and the next. And by the time you have it, you have all the feedback.
What about you, Jordan?
I actually don't have too much to add to all those. They pretty much summed it up really well.
I mean, you're also using a lot of surveys and stuff to get like that feedback.
Yeah.
And kind of on that last topic, like how do you all determine your payouts? So starting with you, Jen, how do you determine like how you pay out your publishers?
Yeah, so I think to go back to the question of when should a brand consider affiliate marketing, it's when you really have a robust system of understanding the customers that have come in. What's the retention rate? What is the life cycle? What's the payback period of this customer? And what do you need in order to keep your business afloat? And one of those things is obviously determining the customer acquisition cost because that will dictate how much you're willing to pay on any media. So within our company, we're heavily metrics driven. So whether it's the TV ads you see, we actually are attributing it to a new customer through surveys or attribution through like these baseline marketing information where you're actually able to see like, okay, what's the baseline of this customer? And so if we're looking at a site on a regular basis, how many people are on it? And then once a TV ad has aired, how many more people have come onto the site? So we look at a lot of different details, but customer acquisition cost is probably the most important. And when you're looking at leads, you kind of have to back into, so say your customer acquisition cost is $20 and publisher drives 10 leads and one of those turns into a customer. Now you know that you're willing to pay $2 per lead. So essentially that's what we look at on a regular basis and we determine what's good quality. And then on top of that, we do a lot of like optimizations on our own landing pages and traffic sources.
And how do you do it, Jordan?
I think it depends a lot on the publisher or the affiliate you're looking at. But for me, I look at it and I say, okay, I want to be easy to work with. As a general rule, I know what a profitable customer is for us and I know what my range is. And so if someone approaches me and is within my range, even if it's on the high end, it's better to start a relationship with that person than to finagle it and have a month-to-month situation where you can renegotiate and talk about it than it is to try to, hey, this is what we want, this is our ideal customer, this, X, Y, Z, because then they feel like they're working with a stickler from day one. So if you can come into the relationship with them feeling like you're really open, you're really easy to work with, then all of a sudden month 2 you say, hey, we really like these metrics that we're seeing, but these ones are a little off. And all of a sudden, guess what? Because you were so willing to open up and be flexible with them, they turn around and say, hey, I'm going to give some of that back to you. I'm going to say, okay, let's adapt this or change this. So that's been my experience. So it really is on a case-by-case basis, but just being flexible with people in the initial talks.
What was sort of the process with the brands you manage, Eli? Like, how did you come with
In terms of payments?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Obviously, like Jordan says, you want to come into the publisher negotiation with an open mind. And what drives the relationship in a month and 2 is the user acquisition cost. But in the initial negotiation, if the partner has a unique business model, like I own the SMS channel for faculty members that you want to sell a card to, he has negotiation power. And I have my range, but if it's unique, I'm willing to go. I've had cases where we've done prepayments, upfront payment, and then we'll track. We're willing to do that. But I've had cases like, you're not giving me something unique. It's either action CPA or that's it, or CPI, but with a low cap. Caps are something interesting that has helped us a lot to keep the brand and the company safe. Hey, we're going to start with a 2,000 cap per month. you're killing me. You want to grow, you want to play, you got to show that we deliver results. Because if I open the gates and we spend 10,000 and it doesn't back up, it's bad for you, it's bad for me. Flexibility, definitely. Flexibility, and again, how unique. It's how much you want to test it. How unique is it? That defines the negotiation power. Great.
And you, starting with Jen, do you have any tips for like, once you start seeing some success and traction with like partner marketing, like how do you keep growing it? Like how do you keep scaling it and like make it into a bigger and bigger channel, or at least find its proper place?
So I think one thing is, I think it's good to test different channels. So kind of determine maybe there's 3 partners you want to test on this type of channel. So for example, we work with a lot of these health content sites. And so we did an initial test. It actually performed very well. It hit our customer acquisition costs. And so we took that and realized there was actually other partners we could work with which are also in this space. And so now we're working with additional partners in that area. But then we've also decided, well, what are some other places that you can monetize? So there's a limited amount of scale on content where it's organic traffic that's coming in. So what are some other placements that you can do? So we've worked and kind of created some like different widgets on certain pages, or decided to do like a email blast and see how many users come in through that. So I think one is kind of honing in on the type of partners you want to work with. So experiment, find a good channels, hone in on those channels, and then kind of work with those specific partners to grow it.
And Eli, any tips?
On scaling up, right? With partners, don't lose focus. Don't lose focus, as has happened to me, I've learned about it, on the results. It's very tempting to, hey, this worked, let's get all the publishers in this industry, and if you don't lose focus on the results, that's gonna be your North Star, my North Star. I ask this question oftenly, and it's what's on the side of the event. Like for me, it's very important when we're doing a partnership for a campaign. Who's going to drive? I know that that's the first question everyone's thinking about that no one tells. Like who's going to drive? Who's going to move the needle here? Sometimes I bring it up front saying, sometimes it's going to be you, the publisher. Sometimes it's going to be the technology. Sometimes it's going to be the market. But it always is going to be the result. So
how do you decide that?
I say it up front. This is my user acquisition cost, and I can support maybe a 30% increase for 2 months or 3, but this is a number, and then it's not enough by saying it, but in week 1 after we launch, we got to go back to the numbers, and then week 3 and month number 2, we got to go back to that number. In good and bad situations, that has helped us overcome it because we don't lose focus. We can talk about a lot of things, but if we align with the
Just to add what Eli was saying is on focus, but also don't lose enthusiasm, because what happens a lot of times is you find something, there's that whole saying, nail it and scale it, but in reality, nailing it with one channel rarely works the same way with every channel. So you're gonna end up finding something that works, and you're gonna go, oh, you know what, I'm gonna distribute this across all of my partnerships, and this is I'm gonna go up to a $100 million company or a $1 billion company. I'm really excited, and your energy level goes up, and then all of a sudden you see the results come back in a month or 2, and you're like, holy smokes, that didn't work at all like the original time. And so don't get discouraged by that. You just have to realize that every single time, I'm a huge believer in split testing and adjusting the process over and over and over and over again. And so if it doesn't work the second time like it did the first time, it's all right. That's expected. Don't expect it to work every time.
Great. And then is there anything you're like either excited for or worried about with like how your partner channel is going to be in the next few years? Like what do you think is going to change, and are you excited or like a little bit worried? Starting with Jen.
I'm excited. I actually think that the healthcare space is one that's a little bit archaic. So, being part of a telehealth company, we see that there's a lot of competitors and they're doing really interesting stuff. And we're trying to figure out where each of us kind of fit. Like some of you may be familiar with Hims. They do a lot of these ads where it's like these cool guys that are shampooing their hair on TV, and they don't actually tell you what they do. So I think it's really interesting because we're kind of merging technology with healthcare, and as we're doing that, there's this industry that is not really regulated, but is slowly starting to get more and more regulated every day. We still want to be careful because, it only takes a few competitors doing the wrong thing and we get grouped in with that. And so we've seen that in the past. So really just trying to distinguish ourselves as a healthcare company, whereas some may be trying to be more of a lifestyle brand. And we're trying to make sure that they don't do anything that could make telehealth as a whole look very bad. So I think the only challenge is, you may see them doing some black hat stuff and you're like, well, that's not legal and I don't want my pharmaceutical company doing any of these things. So I think it's really exciting to see where it's growing, but I think it's also like we actually are at that stage where we want the competitors to do well as well.
Great. And Jordan, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm super excited. I mean, I'm in the alarm industry, and so you have these behemoths like ADT and Vivint and Monotronics that have been around for 30 plus years. They put themselves in a really bad spot because they're all leveraged really high. They have an incredibly high debt to income ratio. And so they have no ability to adapt to the market. Whereas you have other companies like Ring, hopefully ourselves, Simply Safe, that have come out and said, you know what? We know that people don't want to be locked into 5-year contracts. We know that people want to pay, they don't want to pay $50, $60 a month for a home security system. And we've now got the technology to where they can set it up in their home in 20 minutes and pay $15 a month. And so when you look at that and you say, okay, the big guys can't adapt, there's so much room for growth. And there are so many industries that are always going through this cycle to where you can look at it and say, okay, you know what? This is where it's been for the last 20, 30 years. This industry's prime for disruption. So I'm super excited.
Great. And Eli, I have a slightly different question for you. So now that affiliate marketing is officially dead and we all call it partner marketing and pretend that affiliates don't exist, do you think that's going to change anything about who is the affiliates that people used to work with and now will work with in the future?
That's a very interesting question. So how is the traditional partnership changing?
Yes.
In my opinion, I think it's towards uniqueness. Again, a partner is someone you can do more with together than each on their own. So coupon sites rely on coupons, but I can also use coupons for B2B deals. So I'm excited to see that probably in the following months and years, the traditional partnership focus on inputs, and I know that Matt is going to talk way more about this, but I'm going to give probably a trailer preview. Inputs are needed. To generate the CPI and the CPA, you need the CPM. But what unites everyone, even the tech guy maintaining the platform and making sure tracking and postback works, it's the result. So I'm excited to see that whoever changes from and Zach, this is your quote, whoever changes from a consumer mindset to a producer mindset and aligns with that result is going to bring together, I'm just going to see more cross collaboration, not only within teams in the company, but with different companies and different teams from companies. Cross collaboration, one result. I see that as a very bright future. I think it's going to be very interesting. And when I say future, now, tomorrow, next second.
That's awesome. Thank you all so much. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Yeah, I have a question. Question for Eli. When you mentioned that you worked closely, you gave an example. You worked closely with to create a funnel with the auto company, and then it was a successful experience for your side, and then they took that funnel and they implemented it with their other partners. Are you guys comfortable with that? I'm just curious. Because normally when we create a custom media strategy, there's a lot of NDAs involved where we typically don't share that data and that same approach to our other clients. So yeah.
I can elaborate a little bit more.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of this campaign. To make it more visually explainable, you're looking at a car online, and then you see the pictures, you see the price, contact information, and right below, some partners have it above the image, it says, pay for your car, drive with. And then
Okay.
Later on, yeah, so now you know. So later on, we found out that it says also, hey, get a quote for, just right below or to the left, get a quote for car insurance. Do we feel that it was like a bad move? I don't feel that at all. I feel that the relationship with the partners has improved because now they're asking me, so what's the next move? And now what I'm trying to do with them is, hey, a lot of people fill in the contact form to get in contact with a car seller. Why don't we use the email? So that's something I want to try out. And because they know that we mean business, it's good. At the end, if it doesn't perform well for us in a year or two, you know, just take it, we'll leave it, we'll find the next blue ocean. But to recap on your question, it has helped us get more close to the partner. The data we share, funnel conversions, clicks, signups, first drive, all that. Some data we can share, but the partners are very happy.
I guess just to narrow down, so you're flexible with the creatives and you believe in the two-way approach. So you work together to come up with a better solution.
Yes,
Now,
friction
right
creates
now.
energy. You need two poles to create energy. You need the positive, the negative one, and that doesn't mean negative like bad way, but you need to put the conflict there to make something new happen. And I think that's an example that proves it.
Perfect, thank you.
Great. Any other questions?
That was way too far of a walk.
The mic's over here now.
So understanding that, you know, there are agencies who actually use affiliates to do some of their work, to do some of their media
Sorry,
buys.
partners. You mean partners.
Okay, that too, yeah. And we know that some affiliates, you know, kind of brand themselves as agencies of record. Have you guys, and maybe this is directed more to Jennifer and Eli, but have you guys had situations where you found it better to work with the partner or the agency of record as opposed to the actual agency themselves? Have you come across that very much?
I haven't really come across that, to be honest. I mean, I know that there's some other competitors in the space who do have an agency of record that they use, and I think that kind of puts almost like another buffer of what some affiliates are doing. So having this agency of record now hosting the page allows you to do a little bit more in terms of, like, for example, if you're working with native partners and they're driving traffic to this native page, if you are the advertiser making a fake page talking about, you know, how like ED pills have changed your life, there's something a little bit like it's a bad consumer experience, especially if people find out that that's your site. I think having an agency of record kind of puts this buffer between that. So that's something I've seen, but we haven't done it ourselves.
And I want to understand a question a little bit more. You said if it's good to partner with an agency that has sub-affiliates or sub-publishers, sub-partners within?
Sure. So just to frame this, you know, in the proper, you know, context for this question that I'm asking. So we've had situations, I personally have had situations where maybe someone on my brand team pitched an agency, sent out some RFPs, you know, maybe we didn't get anywhere. Maybe we got as far as, you know, winning the buy, trying to do testing, but for whatever reason, the agency couldn't make the tracking work. They didn't understand their metrics. But at the same time, that agency contracted an affiliate partner or agency of record, and that partner was able to get everything to work perfectly. We were able to test and get some real results. And then the agency came back later and wanted the relationship back, but then that created conflict between the agency and their agency of record.
Well, that's a very good question. That's a very good question.
Yeah, I have no idea how to answer that.
I mean,
very specific problem.
whenever anything gets gray or ambiguous, it's better to address the elephant in the room up front, quick. It's always better. Again, if it comes up in the news, you want to make sure you did the right thing. So I've had situations like that. I've been open with the publishers. Hey, the whitelist showed that you guys approach with this publisher. I'm letting you guys know. And when a publisher does that, it kind of, if the agency was not aware, it kind of speaks bad to what they're trying to do. So that's why addressing the elephant in the room, it's always, always best. It's even a very powerful negotiation tactic. I could say something to you, and then everyone else will know tomorrow. And I've had the cases, and it's better. I know that it's like human nature. I think it comes with like preschool and primary when you oh, I'm guilty. No, no guilt. Just put it out and ask for help. Like raise your hand. And it's a lot of people that can let you know what to do. That would be my suggestion. Always, always, always.
Great. Any last question? Great. Thank you again, everyone.
Thank you.